So funny story, I actually meant to release this video over a week ago. I had the voice recording done and everything, I just needed to edit it. But Silksong had its hooks into me so deep, I just couldn't pull myself away. So for that, I'm truly sorry. The silver lining with this is that I've now done a speedrun and a Steel Soul run of the game, and I've 100%ed the game and have over 100 hours into it, and I think all my original advice still holds true. But one thing I don't mention in my original script, so I'll just mention it right off the bat, is before you start Act 3, look up a guide or a Reddit thread or something on everything that you cannot do in Act 3. This will allow you to not miss certain bosses or other hidden secrets that go away once Act 3 begins. I did my first playthrough fully blind, and to be honest, I'm really glad I did, as it was a wonderful experience, but I do wish I had looked up some things that change in Act 3, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so now I have to go back and do another playthrough. But honestly, I don't mind that much because I just love this game. But on the topic of looking stuff up, if you are stuck, then by all means look up paths to help you out or strategies on how to beat bosses. Silksong is a wonderful game, and yes, it can be quite difficult, but with these tips, it can help ease the burden of difficulty and help you overcome Silksong's high difficulty curve. So without further ado, let's jump into it. The first one that I will say is pretty broad in general, and that's just explore. The bosses can get pretty tough in this game, so I highly recommend exploring everything you can so you make yourself stronger. I love getting lost in the vast world of Farloom, and while doing so, I found a ton of secrets which led to my Silk Spool and Health Mask inventory increasing by quite a bit, which obviously helped me a ton on some of the tougher bosses. Along the way, I also found some pretty good upgrades like the Fractured Mask, which is great for survivability. I'm in Act 3 now, and I've basically never taken it off since I found it in Act 1. So don't try and mainline the story, and just take your time and adventure around and explore all that Farloom has to offer. And while exploring, this brings me to my next big tip, survivability. It's completely inevitable that you will be dying in Silksong a lot, but you can drastically reduce your deaths with this one tip. If you find some enemies that are easy for you to kill, you can load into the area, get hits on them to build up your Silk Spool, heal, leave and reset the area, and then go back in and the ads will be there again. I should mention that it depends on the enemy types. Certain enemies do not respawn if you just reload the instance. Sometimes they require you to fast travel away or sit at a bench, but other enemies will just straight up come back to life as long as you leave the area and come back. So if you do this enough times, eventually you'll be at max health with a full Silk Spool, which will greatly aid in your exploration. This is especially helpful in areas where you don't have a map yet or you don't have a bench nearby. So yeah, if you first get to a brand new area, you can't just rely on a bench to spawn you close to where you are. So this is a great tip for giving you some extra health. And in a similar vein, let's talk benching or bench quitting. Say that you're trying to get to a really tough to reach area and the path is long and treacherous and very difficult. Let's say you're trying to do the jumping path for the Fey Down Cloak in Mount Fey, for instance. Make sure you hit the nearest bench to where you are, and then if you're about to die, don't take the death and risk losing your silk. Maybe you are deep into the level and getting back to your silk can be a real challenge. Simply just quit out your game. Your last save point will be the latest bench you sat at. So instead of risking it when you are on 1 health and don't have any other way and don't know where your next bench is, simply restart yourself. You'll save yourself a ton of rosaries this way. And speaking of rosaries, that brings me to my next topic. In Hollow Knight, I never lost my soul, and as a result, I always had enough geo for where I was at in the game. I never farmed for geo once. In Silksong, you will be broke a lot of the time. My advice is to find a decent rosary farm. I didn't farm rosaries in Act 1 because I figured the economy would be similar to Hollow Knight, and boy was I wrong. You really want to do this for a few reasons. You'll come across vendors and not be able to buy their stuff. This one isn't too bad, but the worst case is when you find Chakra and you can't buy her maps, or you can't activate a bench or elevator. It really sucks because then you have to double back to these spots later when you do have the funds. In Hollow Knight, I never ran into this issue, so it wasn't until the end of Act 2 that I finally farmed rosaries. And once I finally did it, I so wish I had done it sooner. But the other reason I'm super glad that I finally farmed rosaries is this. You can use them to buy shard bundles. In the early game, I had tons of shard bundles because I had limited tools and the enemies in Bone Bottom drop a lot of shards, but later in the game, you're gonna burn through these shards very quickly. As a result, I was very hesitant to use my tools because I didn't want to go farm shards. And then later in Act 2, I faced the worst boss in the game in my opinion, and he is clearly designed around using tools to beat him. But because I was poor on shards, I only wanted to use my tools as a last resort. This really dragged out how long it took for me to beat the boss. It was in a super annoying to reach area, so I didn't want to leave to farm and come back. So instead, I just played the boss super slowly. But if I had a bunch of shard bundles, I would have just tool spammed him and probably beat him about an hour quicker than it wound up taking me. After I beat him, before I moved to Act 3, I wanted to stock up on resources. So I took 1 hour to farm shards in Act 2, and I actually made a video about this farm. It is extremely efficient, and I've never needed to get rosaries since. I converted 20 of each type of rosary string, and I bought a ton of shard bundles. And afterwards, I was smoking pretty hard bosses in less than 5 attempts because I could just abuse them with my abilities. I didn't care if I died a few times and had to spend 200 shards to build my tools back because I was swimming in them. Also, I didn't mention this, but during the rosary farm, the enemies also drop shards, so I was farming 2 for 1. The scarcity mindset early in the game really hampered my strategies on certain bosses because I was too frugal with my tools, and this made me take way more attempts than I needed to. So yes, it may suck farming rosaries for an hour, but trust me, it will save you a ton of time in many other ways in the long run. You can buy out all the vendors when you show up to them, and you can use tools like crazy in boss fights. So just throw on a YouTube video for an hour and mindlessly farm away. And that brings me to my last point. While I was farming the rosaries, I was also testing out the other tools. Because the enemies I was farming dropped shards, it was a good time to tinker with some of the upgrades that I'd found. And what I learned was how each tool actually functions. Again, this will help you out a ton later in the game, as it will expand your knowledge and help you figure out what tools are good for what enemies. Once I hit Act 3, I got to a boss that the Volt Spear works amazingly on, and I would have never known that it was such a good tool for the job if I hadn't tested it out earlier during my rosary farm, and I never would have tested it out when I was poor on shards because I wanted to make each tool use count. So just throwing out a bunch of tools to see what the heck they do seemed like a giant waste of resources. But when you're rich on resources, you won't be afraid to use them when you need them. Had I done this before my 2-hour battle with Grohl, I would have just spammed cogflies and conch cutters at him. Regrettably, I didn't test out my tools until far too late. The Delver's Drill would also have wrecked Father of Flame, a fight that I beat pretty easily because I'm good at pogoing, but it would have gone so much quicker if I knew I had a tool that can just drill straight down. So make sure you test out all your tools so you know how they function and when you can apply them for certain boss fights. Again, it will save you a lot of time in the long run. And on that same note, it can also be good to test out other crests too. I really like the base crest, so I haven't experimented much with the others, but during my rosary farm, I did switch out to the other crests so that I could test them out and get a feel for them. But again, knowing how each one works can help you a lot for certain bosses. So let's recap. Tip number 1, explore the world and don't rush through the game. While doing this, you're going to find a ton of upgrades along the way. I have so many comments on videos asking how I have so many masks, and I didn't do anything special. I just explore every area that I'm in thoroughly before I move on. Tip number 2, farm silk from respawning enemies. This is great for survivability. Tip number 3, bench quitting to keep yourself from dying and losing your silk in a tough to reach area. Tip number 4, farm rosaries. Probably good to farm a little in Act 1 and then again in Act 2 when the farm yields more rosaries for the time that you put in. The farm that I did was crazy efficient and allowed me to buy everything from everyone and never need to worry about rosaries again. And while I was doing this, I was also doing tip number 5, which is testing out your tools and crests. Knowing what each tool and crest excels at or is bad at will help you immensely in figuring out what to use on what enemies and bosses that you encounter later in the game. I wish I had done this so much sooner, as it would have made my boss guides that much better. But if you don't want to do that, then you can be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my how-to boss guides. I will have a guide for beating every boss in Silksong, and I already have over 25 videos of that on the channel, so if you're struggling with a certain boss, maybe give that a watch and it will help you. And I guess for a bonus tip, use your map markers and maybe even keep some notes on your phone or in a Word document or something. This game is vast and it's hard to remember everything, so jotting down something like, can't access area in Bone Bottom, need double jump, will help you later. Then when you unlock double jump, you can head back there and see what you missed. This will help you not miss anything, but this is also more applicable if you're a completionist. Anyways, that's it for the guide. I just wanted to compile some tips and tricks for things that I wish I knew earlier and that I had to learn the hard way after my more than 50 hours in the game. So I hope it helped. Come by my Twitch at itstizzle7 if you want to watch me play live. I'm on to Act 3 now and I'm having a blast, and I will be doing the full 100% completion this week. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.